Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Senate Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife. It is an honor committee for me to serve as your chairman the next couple of years. And Senator Jones is going to back me up early and often. We look forward to the work ahead. It's good to see friends out there, and hopefully we can stay friends as we keep doing this work. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get into roll call. The committee, we won't require seconds on the committee work that we will do. It just kind of expedites everything. Other than that, I just would remind everyone that this legislative process, we require some decorum and respect and professionalism. And one of our colleagues in the House used to say, be nice or leave, and that's pretty well put right there. Look forward to it. Sue, would you take roll, please?
Senator Boner.
Here.
Senator Hicks.
Here.
Senator Jones.
Here.
Senator Schuler.
Here.
Chairman Landon.
Here. Committee, the first bill for our consideration is Senate File 4. This is the work of our TRW committee during the interim. So happy to have Senator Jones and Chairman Schuler with us on the committee still, so that'll be helpful. State Park Peace Officers definition and scope of authority. I'm going to ask the department to come on up. Introduce yourselves and help us to walk through this bill, reminding two of us, and there's three of us who aren't quite as familiar with this, so catch us up. Director Glenn, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Dave Glenn, Director of Wyoming State Parks and Cultural Resources. On my left is our Chief of Law Enforcement, Mark Coughlin, and on my right is Nick Nealon, Deputy Director. I feel like it's the first day of school again here, coming back, so bear with me as we move along. I'm going to punt it off to these gentlemen as fast as I can, but I think I kind of wanted to throw out, when this first came up as an interim topic, as director, I was going, we don't have enough resources within our parks alone right now. How are we going to help other law enforcement agencies and other pieces? And also, I don't want our officers writing speeding tickets, and going after people for misdemeanors off of state parks. And when I brought that up with Mark, the first thing he did was just pass me the policy right away that he had put together as a draft. And I'm going to read it and then I'll punt it off to these folks. But the policy, as it says, as a general rule, LE Rangers will not conduct law activities outside of their assigned land, properties, and facilities. And the next part says, before engaging in law enforcement activities outside of their areas, LE Rangers should possess a reasonable cause to believe that a crime is occurring and circumstances exist for LE Rangers to intervene, or an incident involving an immediate threat of public safety, serious bodily injury, or death to any person. That is when we would intervene. That is when we would help. And these guys will cover that topic. But the bottom line is, it's health and life safety that we would be helping others. Our mission tagline is to improve communities and enrich lives. And the more I thought about this bill, that's what we're doing by helping other law enforcement agencies, mostly sheriff's offices, sheriff's departments, when they need help and when they need support. And we can't improve communities and enrich lives without that ability to do that. And with that, I'll pass it off to Nick and Mark, the gurus that know more about this than I do.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman. Nick Nealon, Deputy Director, State Parks. Just a little bit of background. We have 5 full-time law enforcement rangers in our agency to cover all 42 of our sites. We routinely hire as many as 25 seasonals for the summertime, folks who typically will come on in April or May and stay through Labor Day or the end of September. We also, all 30 of those people, every single one of them is post-certified, commissioned, fully trained, like any other law enforcement officer in the state. We take great pride in the fact that our rangers are all professional, and we are striving to be not only the best trained law enforcement agency in the state, but the best trained state park force in the country. That's our goal. We spend considerable amount of resources providing that training and getting equipment for our folks to reach that goal. There are many instances where, so most state park systems, in fact, all that I'm aware of around the country, park rangers have statewide authority. We are the only one that I am aware of that does not. There are many instances that and I'm going to let Chief Coughlin talk about this. There are many instances where this fact, the fact that we can only enforce the laws on state park property has impeded our ability to do our job and has caused us to not be able to assist local law enforcement as best we could. And with that, unless there are any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Coughlin to talk about the details of this a little bit.
Any questions for the Deputy Director Committee? Okay, thank you, Deputy. Appreciate that. Good morning,
Hey,
Chief.
good morning. Mark Coughlin, I'm the Chief Ranger for the Wyoming State Parks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators, for allowing me to speak on behalf of this bill today. As the Director and Deputy Director said, that the primary purpose of this bill is public safety, and that's the standpoint where it comes from. My background is I've been with Wyoming State Parks for 3 years, and I come from a 27-year background in Colorado where I managed one of the largest recreation areas in the state of Colorado for 20 years. And that's my experience, and that's what they brought me on to, is kind of to work with this program and kind of, Colorado is far ahead of Wyoming as far as visitation goes and recreational trends. And I was kind of brought in here to kind of get us ready and prepare us for that shift, which we're seeing now. And I'll go more into that. When you think about what a park ranger does, like roles, duties, and responsibilities, I think we all have different ideas. Our primary goal, and my primary goal, is public safety. And that comes in many forms. Obviously, it comes in forms of law enforcement. That's our primary job. It also comes in forms of search and rescue, providing medical care, ice rescue. We conducted ice rescue training yesterday up at Boise State Park with Wyoming Game and Fish and local law enforcement. We do swiftwater training. We do a lot of things, public relations, a lot of talk. But our primary job is to do law enforcement and provide public safety. And that's where this comes from. And I'll just share with you some of kind of where we're at and kind of where we're trying to go and how we're trying to better the public safety in the state of Wyoming. As Deputy Director Nalen mentioned, we are fully certified peace officers. We go through the same police academy. We're required to have the same annual training as any officer or sheriff's deputy in the state. We have the same gear as far as tasers, firearms, body cams, vehicles, the same as any other peace officer in the state. But we're limited in our authority in some ways, and we'll get into that a little bit. And that's what I want to talk about. It's really the concern that we're trying to address, the problem we're trying to solve, as it were. As the Deputy Director Nalen mentioned, for the whole state of Wyoming, I have myself and 4 full-time rangers. This is not a power grab. It is hard to do that with 5 people. But we're trying to enhance the best we can, provide the best level of service that we can as park rangers. I'm pretty fortunate to be on a national board, and I get to talk to other chiefs and other rangers around the country. And I think we're working towards, in the last 3 years, really changed kind of the way we look at law enforcement in parks and how we operate as rangers. And we're really starting to kind of get up there with states like Texas or Florida or those bigger states you might think that would have premier programs. That's where we're headed. And then that's our goal. And that's my job to make that happen. That's one reason why we're here. As you can imagine, our parks are large. Glendo Reservoir, Boise State Park, they're over 40,000 acres. When those reservoirs, especially Glendo State Park, when it's full on a busy Saturday or Sunday in the summertime, you're looking at 5,000 to 10,000 people, which makes it one of the largest population bases in the state. And it's our job to provide public safety and law enforcement for those areas. So we take that very seriously in our training. Like I said, we're held to the same standards as all sheriff's deputies and police officers in the state. And we exceed the minimum training in the state. Our average training hours is about 80 hours per year per officer because of all the things that we train for. So we take that seriously and about that responsibility seriously. The current laws restrict us to state parks, historic sites within our agency. That's where we're allowed to conduct law enforcement, and we can't go outside there. Where this gets kind of dicey, what kind of puts us really in a kind of a precarious situation is, let's say we arrest somebody for a DUI in one of our parks. Nowadays, most people just don't have alcohol on board. They have something else on board, some other kind of substance. So we take them to the hospital to do a blood screening and figure out what they have on board. We can imagine once we leave that park boundary and we take some to the hospital, if that detainee decides to fight the hospital staff or fight us, what authority do we have? It's a little ambiguous as what that looks like. You know, can we intervene? Or if that person on the way to be transported on the way to jail or a hospital decides to kick out the windshield of a patrol car, which we've had happen, you know, when we have to take them out of the car to restrain them, and once we leave that vehicle, you know, it puts us kind of in a precarious situation. And that's one of the concerns I have, is we put some of that liability back on our officers. So the question is, hey, how do we fix that? How do we make that more reasonable? You know, we're not allowed to pursue folks outside of our parks. Let's say a crime occurs, like most police officers in the state, there's a fresh pursuit, as most of you understand. If a crime occurs inside some jurisdiction that protracts outside that jurisdiction, those officers have the legal authority to pursue. We do not. In one instance in my time, in the last 2 years it happened, one of our rangers up at Boise State Park was intentionally almost run over by a suspect. Not just swerved at him, but the person literally tried to run him over. He was intoxicated, had warrants, so our ranger pursued him to the park boundaries at Boise State Park. And once they hit that park boundaries, they had to stop. They had to stop, and they had to contact local law enforcement, let them know what's going on. Now they're just observer. Now they have to follow at the speed limit and let people know what's going on. Thankfully, that person was found north of the Thermopolis in a field. Farmer called it in, and they were able to make that arrest. So that's really pretty hard. Another incident that occurred in the last couple of years was one of our rangers was going from Kirkgowdy State Park, which is 25 miles west of here, heading into town for a meeting. And about halfway, he encountered a drunk driver. Somebody was greatly weaving outside their lane. He couldn't get a hold of the local authority to pull them over, because we do have the authority if we're requested by local law enforcement to assist, we're allowed to do that. He couldn't get a hold of somebody. And if you guys are familiar with that area, there's a school and a restaurant, the Bunkhouse Restaurant, about halfway. He was approaching that area, and so he had to make that decision for public safety to make that stop. He did, but he took that risk himself. But finally, once got him pulled over, Highway Patrol said, "Yep, do what you need to do." Of course, the person was intoxicated, so he made the arrest and made the road safe again. It just put him in a very bad situation where he's acting on his own outside of our authority. But for public safety, he felt that was the right thing to do. Another issue we have is at the State Museum, which is right across the street from here, where our offices are housed. We don't have any authority in that building. Several times in the last 3 years, we've had intoxicated people, homeless folks, people with mental health issues. I had to go downstairs and talk to them, but I had no legal authority if something happens in that building. We're also not allowed to enter into an MOU with another agency. I cannot enter into an MOU with Chief Francisco where he would allow me to do enforcement at a building on his behalf. We're prohibited by state law from doing that. So that bill helps fix this problem as well. Even for the local sheriff, and there'll be some sheriffs here to speak later, I'm not allowed to enter an MOU to help them out in certain places or do enforcement in their counties. We're precluded from doing that. Last summer, if you've ever been out to Fort Bridger for Rendezvous, it's the world's largest mountain man rendezvous. It's a great event. We help out there. I send a lot of my rangers out there to help out at that event. This year on Saturday, right when the event ended, an ambulance goes by, and my rangers trying to figure out what's going on. They hear on the radio that there was a shooting 2 blocks away in town. One individual shot another guy in the chest several times. Our rangers were the first on scene. As you can imagine, when these tragic events happen, they happen quickly. And radio traffic trying to get on, trying to get permission to go, there's not time to do that because it's really frantic. But they're the first ones there. One thing more than anything, help protect the ambulance crew, because someone just got shot in the middle of the street and we didn't know where the suspect was. So they were to help out, and then our rangers helped out the sheriff's department go to that suspect's house and help effect the arrest. The Pioneer Museum, our rangers go there a lot. It's on the county fairgrounds. If they're there at the Pioneer Museum and something happens in the fairgrounds, there's a fight that happens where it may be, they can't help out. They're prohibited from doing that. Our rangers travel a lot around the state because it's so big, for training, to help other parks out, for meetings. For me, for example, I'm officed here in Cheyenne, but I travel around the state to check on our rangers and help out training. If I see a highway patrol officer on the side of the road that has somebody outside of a car doing roadside maneuvers, I'm going to stop. I'm not legally allowed to stop, so to speak, because it's outside my authority. Or if I see a deputy doing an inventory search on a vehicle on the side of the road, I think y'all would expect one of our officers to stop and help out to make sure they're okay. But we don't have a legal authority to do that. So that kind of fixed some of those problems. Another issue we have is we have a lot of crimes that occur in our parks, as you can imagine. Everything from sex assaults to homicide to smaller issues. One case that we had was at Glendo State Park, where you guys might have heard about this story, where there's some cliff diving areas at Glendo State Park. There's cliff areas. People dive off them illegally. You guys might have been there before and seen that. I'm not going to make any judgments, but there's this crazy fad where people take car jacks, and on the edge of the cliffs, they'll find a crack and they'll put a car jack in there, and they'll slough off that big sheet of rock just to watch it fall in the reservoir. We had that happen up there, and so we were able to work with DCI to find some suspects, but we can't go outside of our parks to investigate crimes because we don't have authority to do that. If we just need to go talk to suspects, if we need to go grab a search warrant or grab a warrant to arrest somebody, we're precluded from doing that. And it makes it difficult for us to do our jobs, and it puts that onus on other law enforcement agencies that are already understaffed like we are. I think you'd be hard pressed to find any law enforcement agency in the state that says they're fully staffed or they're where they want to be. Those are just a few examples, and there's many more, and I want to respect your all's time, but I just want to share those with you. As Deputy Director Nayland said, all the state park rangers have law enforcement authority that I know of, all have statewide jurisdiction to handle these exact problems. We live in a very large state, and we're just here to try to help out and do the best we can to help provide public safety and make sure our folks are safe as well. And this really comes with some responsibility, and I understand that's my job, and I understand that completely. That's why before I went to our director, Glenn, with this idea, is I had a policy that states like, hey, look, only under certain circumstances will we do law enforcement outside of our properties. It'd be a very limited basis, so we could be respectful and show that responsibility. And again, we have so many limited people. We're not going to be doing radar for traffic. We're not going to be hunting for warrants. We don't have time to manage our own parks, let alone do stuff outside of our parks. But there are those cases I explained where we need this bill to help us out to keep ourselves safe and just help keep the public safe. The folks I talk to in my positions in other state agencies have a policy that follows just like we have here. Even though their rangers have authority around the state, they have the same policies. We do very similar policies that we do. So, because they understand the importance of that and liability and kind of really what our roles, duties, and responsibilities are, they have a good understanding of that, and so do we. So, I know the law enforcement community, all the ones I've talked to around the state are in support of this. I will not speak for them. That's why some are here today. They'll speak on our behalf. And with that, I'll stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Chief, nice job. A lot of good information. Appreciate that. I know that Senator Boner knows all about that Glendo State Park area. So, any questions, committee? Go ahead, Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, I'm kind of interested in, you mentioned about that, right now you can't enter into an MOU with other agencies. So if this bill passes, would we have to do an MOU, or would it just be, you'd have automatic authority to work with these other agencies?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler, this would allow us not to have to enter into MOUs.
Thank you.
Good question. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the detailed explanation of the bill. But I'm just wondering, why is the status quo the way that it is? What led to the legislature at some point saying you can't leave your park boundaries? Just a little bit of background would be helpful.
Chairman Lander to Senator Boner, when we were created, the first law enforcement park we were able to do law enforcement authority on was Hot Springs State Parks back in the 70s. In 1991, we added all the other state parks, and that bill language from 1991 still reads the same way it does today. And that was way before my time. I'm not sure how that evolved. Perhaps these gentlemen could weigh in.
Director, anything to add to that?
Mr. Chairman, no.
So, Director, I've got, this is kind of a comment, but a little bit of a question, and would invite you to weigh in on this. But we have, for the past few years, recognized that we're getting an awful lot of pressure on these parks, and I don't see that going away. There was a release that I shared with the committee with the help of Mr. Toner and Mr. Davies, a couple of young men helping us, but set a record again last year for the amount of visitations, and I'm sure that's part of what's driving this too, is it not?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely, absolutely. And it's only going to grow. I think the only correction I would have of the chief's comment is Glendale gets to 20 to 30,000 on a busy weekend. It's not 5 to 10,000. So, when something happens in the community of Glendale, Platte County may be, they have 3 or 4 deputies. I can't speak to that. They may be in Guernsey. They may be 50 minutes away. And for us to be able to help, other examples are, for instance, in Boyson, if there's a car accident in the canyon, in Wind River Canyon, well, our headquarters is right at the head of the canyon. And if it's on the Fremont County side, they may be 30 or 40 minutes away, and we're 5 minutes away where we could go out and help them.
Yeah, appreciate that, Director. Thanks. Anything else, committee? Go ahead, Senator Schuler, and then we'll go to Senator Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I called you Mr. President in my last time. Gee, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Thanks. He's pretty important.
If you did, I'm honored.
Maybe I didn't. I don't know. It's early. Just a question on I'm shocked that you can find 25 seasonals. Would they all be post-certified like your 5 full-time folks?
That's great.
That'd be my first question.
Senator Landon, Senator Schuler, those are great questions. It is a big lift. We get pretty close every year. To help backfill that, we have some non-commissioned seasonal rangers. We help to backfill that to make sure that we have that public safety aspect out there. It's a big lift, but I think it's getting easier now. We've changed kind of our branding, our presence on the media, social media, and with the police academies, especially NPS academies and other law enforcement academies that specialize in natural resource officers. So we're seeing more retired, like newly retired officers in their mid-50s that still want to work and come out to Wyoming and experience Wyoming. So, I think that work we've been doing the last 3 years has really helped to kind of give awareness to who we are and let people know that opportunity exists. So we are seeing an uptick in that, and that's really relieved a lot of pressure on our staff to hire those folks.
Do you have a follow-up, sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
please.
Chairman. Yeah, I'm just wondering, again, with just the few full-time folks and seasonals that you have, how do you determine where you send those? I mean, is it just like Fort Bridger during Labor Day? You send extras there? I mean, how do you disperse them around the state?
And Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler, that's a great question. So they are housed in a specific park. We hire to cover those park needs. As we have larger events, we move staff around. For example, this coming weekend, there's a big ice fishing derby at Boise State Park, and we'll send 3 extra rangers from other parks out there. Fort Bridger, same thing. We evaluate those needs, those special events are, and we move the staff that we can. That's why it's critical that we hire these seasonal rangers to help us absorb some of that capacity.
Thank you.
Chief, I don't know if you knew this, but I think Senator Schuler won that hatchet throwing over there in Fort Bridger one year. She's pretty good at that. Senator Hicks.
Be careful, Mr. Chairman, what you articulated.
Do you have,
It's right under
you want
here
to
in
go,
case you're worried.
you want to go green here for us? And you've got a question.
Mr. Chairman, so my question comes back that we've expanded those that would now be eligible under the statute. Right now, it's superintendents, assistant superintendent, district managers, and now these reserve park rangers, if they've qualified. How many do we currently have, superintendents, assistant superintendents, and district managers that may qualify if they've made their qualifications in the department right now? That's the first part. I'll get to the meat of the question after that.
Okay, go ahead, Chief.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, currently we have 6, a district manager, park superintendents and assistant superintendents. We have 6 of those folks right now.
And Mr. Chairman, how many of those are qualified to serve as law enforcement?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, all of those are qualified. Anybody who is an LE ranger has to meet the same qualifications, whether reserve, a part-time, a full-time, a district manager, whoever that may be. We all have the exact same requirements of any peace officer in the state.
So this is the gist of the question, Mr. Chairman. So under our current statutory contract, all officers, even park rangers, are eligible for the retirement program through the law enforcement account, which is 20 years of service to be fully vested in that program. Is it the same for superintendents, assistant superintendents, district managers, and reserve park rangers for eligibility for participation in the law enforcement retirement program?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, only our full-time rangers are eligible for that retirement plan. Our seasonal rangers, if they work long enough, and there's some state restrictions about when if you're a seasonal ranger, a seasonal employee over 6 months, you have some full-time benefits. So that time over the 6 months, our seasonal rangers are eligible for that retirement benefit. Our reserve rangers are unpaid, so they're not eligible for that benefit. The way the bill is written for that retirement bill that passed 2 years ago, the superintendents, assistant superintendents are not eligible for that retirement plan, only the full-time rangers.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Good questions. Anything else? Senator Jones, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. Chief, is your law enforcement academy training any different than the sheriff's department or highway patrol?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Jones, we go through the exact same academy. We're held to the exact same requirements as any peace officer in the state of Wyoming.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, and as Judiciary Chairman the last couple of years, I learned that there's a lot of pressure on that academy, as we all know. So we're turning a lot of people out of there and trying to help Senator Boner to get that facility as sharpened up as we can. But anything else for the agency? Really appreciate you guys, and please stay put so we can holler another question at you if we need you. Let's go to further testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on Senate File 4? It's good to see that we've got some chiefs and sheriffs here with us, by golly. Mr. Thompson, if you want to come up and join these guys, you might as well. As long as you guys are getting along, that'll be all right.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to defer to our good sheriffs here today, so I'll just, my name's Alan Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of WASCOP, the Chiefs and Sheriffs Association, and I'll let the sheriffs introduce themselves and provide their comment.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Appreciate it. Gentlemen, please introduce yourselves. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Senators. My name is Brian Kozak. I'm the sheriff in Laramie County.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Senators. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. My name is Alex Bach, and I'm the current sheriff of Carbon County, Wyoming.
Gentlemen, take it away. Let's start over here. Sheriff, go ahead, and we'd love to hear your perspective on this bill.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman and Senators. So basically, I think all the sheriffs in Wyoming support that. We brought the topic up at our WASCOP meeting recently. And it was pretty unanimous that all the sheriffs support this bill. The reason I support it is we have a big park in Laramie County, which is called Kirk Gowdy State Park. And oftentimes, I'll have a deputy assigned to the west part of the county. And the deputy and the park ranger kind of work pretty close together, hand in hand. But there are times where that deputy's not in that part of the county. And there may be a call in that area that the way it is now, the park ranger has to ask permission to leave the park and to assist with that call. And we'd like to eliminate kind of that restriction and just work together as a team for the purpose of public safety. There's also parts of the West County around the park that do not have radio reception. And so my fear is that there may be a public safety issue right off of the park. For example, there is a neighborhood, a gated community that actually butts up to the park. The gate, you actually have to go through the park to access the gated community, which is actually off park property. And there's some areas in that community that do not have radio reception. So my fear is something serious could happen in that community. The park ranger is aware and cannot get out on the radio to ask permission to assist. And so I just want the ability for the park rangers to do what they need to do to protect people.
Sheriff, thank you. A couple of years ago, we were fortunate enough to spend some time up at Kirk Gowdy. I had not had the opportunity to do that, and I'm aware of that gated community that you referred to. It was really helpful for us to get boots on the ground and get a look at that park. It's way more extensive than I think that people understand who haven't ever been there. Beautiful park, so thank you, Sheriff. Any questions for the sheriff? Sheriff, let's go west to another sheriff. We'd love to get your intake. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The nature of law enforcement in Wyoming often embodies the old adage that Wyoming is just one big, small town with really long streets. And I don't know where this is more apparent than in Carbon County, where we have 10 distinct municipalities. We have 8,000 square miles of landmass, and we have the third largest reservoir in the state, which is immediately adjacent to Seminole State Park. There's times where a crime may be committed in Seminole where a park ranger is 5 minutes away, and our nearest deputy may be in Baggs, which is an hour and a half away. So we feel that Senate File 004 would be a beneficial mechanism that would help increase our efficiency and our effectiveness in providing public safety and public emergency response, not only to our residents, but also our visitors as well. It's my firm belief that this bill does capitalize on our somewhat limited resources when it does come to law enforcement, and in doing so, that makes our one big small town that much safer. I'll stand for any questions, but that's our opinion in Carbon County.
Sheriff, very well put. All that acreage, all those municipalities, and only one senator. He's sitting right over here. Anyway,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Any questions for our Carbon County Sheriff? Go ahead, Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure this is an easy question, but for someone who's not really familiar with your communication efforts, is it difficult between agencies to get a hold of each other, your park rangers versus your sheriffs versus your HPs? Could you talk about that a little bit?
A lot of it depends on the locale. With 8,000 square miles, we do have certain areas geographically within our county that are just known as radio dead zones, for lack of a better term. But we do have a robust conventional radio system with numerous repeaters throughout the county, in addition to a digital system that we use to communicate with WyoLink and our state park ranger. We have good communications with our state park ranger, both on the actual infrastructure side and the relationship side.
So Sheriff, in other words, we're all on the same system, right? Our park rangers would have the same access as you would have?
When it comes to the radio communications, yes, we reach them via WyoLink.
Yeah, okay. Anything else, committee? Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Chairman.
Anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't. I just want to echo Sheriff Kozak's statement that the WASCOP membership does support this. And I think the examples that they gave today, you could find an example in Park County. You could find an example in, any of the areas across the state. And we look forward to working with Chief Coughlin and his folks should this bill pass.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Really appreciate you coming this morning. Stick around if you can, and if not, we'll see you a little further up the river. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it. All right. Anyone else like to come forward and testify on Senate File 4? We're talking peace officers in our state parks this morning. Anyone else like to come forward? Do we have anyone online, Sue? Okay, nobody online. Okay, we're going to close public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure on this bill?
Move the bill.
Okay, Senator Schuler, and if we had a second, it would have been Senator Hicks, but Senator Schuler moved the bill. Discussion, any discussion on this interim committee bill? Are you ready for the question? Sue, would you take roll on Senate File 4, please?
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call for Senate File 4. Senator Boner.
Aye.
Senator Hicks.
Aye.
Senator Jones.
Aye.
Senator Schuler.
Aye.
Chairman Landon.
Aye. And the total was,
5 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Sue, I appreciate that. Senate File 4 will go to the floor. Senator Jones, would you be willing to play point guard on this one? And we're gonna be right behind you if a fight breaks out, okay? Okay, let's move on to Senate File 99, Game and Fish Property Tax Exemption. We have members of our department here. We'd love to hear from them. Welcome. Please come forward. I notice that we have a commissioner or two. It's good to have everyone here this morning.
Thank
Good
you,
morning,
Mr. Chairman.
Catch
Good
us
to
up
be
to
here.
speed on Senate File 99.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Angie Bruce, the Director of Game and Fish. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you this morning. Brought several folks with me, but when it comes to all things internal and budgets, I bring Eric Wiltinger, my Deputy Director. A few of you have met him before. But then to my left is Commissioner Masterson out of Casper. We're fortunate that this afternoon, we do have a commission meeting and tomorrow. So we have a lot of commissioners in town. And really, when it comes to our budget, it is approved and managed by our commission. So I thought it was appropriate today for Commissioner Masterson to come with as well. So with that, I'd like to take a minute and just back up a little bit. Just like the other bill, this was an interim committee bill and had lots of discussion. But to give you a little bit of background of how we got here, as we look at our budgets going forward, we're really looking at government efficiencies within our budget. Since I took over director in September, we've been really diving in. Deputy Director Wiltinger, it's his job, and he's been really going line item by line item to really say, where can we be more efficient and be extremely responsible for our anglers and hunters' dollars? And the reason that we have to take a hard look at this is because we are at the point in our budget where our revenue that we're generating is getting really close to our budget or our expenses. And when those two get really close, it makes me nervous. So we're taking first a hard look at where we can save money and expenses. And I take a step back and ask myself how we got here and how we got so close. But I think you guys know that post-COVID, price of doing business has gone way up for the state and for everybody. And so the expenses are more than they used to be. We are also very fortunate that you guys granted a state employee salary increase the last few years, which was remarkable, but it's additional expense as well. And then looking at our revenue side, we've had a series of unfortunate events that has taken a cut out of our revenue. The bad winter a few years ago, really hurting our deer population and our antelope population numbers, and therefore we're issuing less license. Hopefully that's a temporary issue. But then also, the fires up in northern Wyoming this year. I don't know if we're quite at a record yet, but we're getting close to over 1,000 refunds on licenses up there. Definitely things that we're willing to do, but yet it's cut into that revenue coming in. So whenever we can, we're looking at where we can save money throughout the department. And so the property tax issue rose to that level of awareness for us. And we started diving into it and realized we are the only state agency where our property where we pay property taxes. Other state agencies don't. And so this bill was generated through the interim session. And really what it does, if you refer to the bill, is it exempts the real property that is used for wildlife management purposes and assessed upon taxable, except those that are taxed under agricultural land value. Very confusing wordage, but let me dive into that a little bit. So it exempts a majority of the properties we pay taxes on it, except for those wildlife management areas, those land masses where people hunt, fish, wildlife view, those would still be assessed at an ag value. So that's an important clarity to have. And then what this does for the department, if we look at the 2023 taxes that the department paid, this would roughly give us another $540,000. Since then, property taxes went up in 2024 about 8%. So as you know, property taxes continue to go up, so that number is going to be different depending on which year you look at. And just a few other things. So if we look at that 2023 number and we say that this would save us just over $500,000, we still would have paid in 2023 $256,000 in taxes to cover those wildlife management areas and also our feed grounds. So with that, I'll pause and stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director. That's all very helpful, catching some of us up who were unable to be there during the interim. So the property issue, things like our hatcheries and our homes that our fisheries division live in, for example, that's the kind of property you're talking about versus feed ground areas. Do I have that correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes. I know the wordage is a little bit confusing in the bill. We've worked on that quite a bit during interim session. I like to think of it pretty easily just about buildings where we operate out of to do wildlife management. So our headquarters here in Cheyenne. We also have 8 regional offices, fish hatcheries, but more of the land mass would still be assessed by the counties for that ag value. So feed grounds, wildlife habitat management areas, that land base.
Okay, thank you, Director. Any questions for the Director? Yeah, go ahead, Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, so if you could help me out, just a rationale as to why, it's interesting to me that we just had the State Parks Division up here, and I don't believe the State Parks, which is probably the largest state landholder other than the school trust, but agency lands, and we don't assess their lands for recreational purposes. Why was the discussion not being in the interim and stuff? Why would the department not seek the same level of exemption from state lands that we grant to many of our other state agencies? I just know that there's a number of them that have land for the specific purposes as to what the agency's function is. But I think the closest comparison is state parks versus game and fish lands. One's managed for wildlife and the associated recreation and the department's habitat units and state parks. So what was the discussion during the interim as to, we're still carving out this really special exemption for the game and fish department on your, let's just call them habitat units around the state of Wyoming, which are some level state recreation areas just managed by a different entity. Why are we carving those out and making those? And that's the question. What was that discussion? Because it makes no sense to me.
Okay, go ahead, Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, I'll start there and maybe look at some of the other senators that were part of the discussion to assist. But I believe the discussion was really about maintaining support for wildlife management areas, so those properties into the future. We do know that it can be a controversial topic for the game and fish to buy additional properties for hunting and fishing. And part of those talking points when we work with legislators, lay folks, is that we continue to pay property taxes on those properties. So I believe that was really the intent here, is to maintain that support for the department in the future. We don't purchase a lot of land, but when we do, we're very strategic about it and having a very finite purpose for that purchase. And that tends to build support for any future purchases of property if we pay taxes on it.
Go ahead, Senator
Mr.
Hicks,
Chairman,
follow up.
and it actually may be a point not worth, but did we look at the fiscal impact associated by including those lands and not? Because that'll be I guess for me, when it comes down to a lot of these decisions and how the impact of the school foundation program and in local government. To your point, a lot of the concern is about the erosion of the tax base, particularly for county commissioners and those local taxing entities that drive that revenue. But do we have that number as to how much difference and revenue was if we included those lands or not?
Yes, so,
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, let me give you 2024 numbers. Those would be updated. And the total that we paid was around $850,000. And that was for everything, both those facilities and those lands. And if just those that would be assessed for agriculture, so those properties, that piece of it was $187,000.
Go ahead, Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and yes, we did have conversations about this, and I think that was the issue, is that we tried to decide, how big a hit is this gonna, take to our budgets and whether or not it was worth it to try to figure out property that was attached to, wildlife areas, because there are a few places where we have that. But I think we just kind of decided to stick with the buildings and not worry about the rest of it. And I don't think it's as big a hit with the land added in, but it is going to be a hit. There's no doubt about it. But I think it's only fair. That was really the bottom line. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate both you senators kind of drilling down on this, because that's an interesting discussion. Go ahead, Senator Hicks.
So, Mr. Chairman, and I would assume that the data's out there, but what I'm curious is as to, because this might come up, as what's the impact of my county? And so, and if with that data is available on a county by county basis, and Mr. Chairman, this is why I think that's particularly important. Where you've had counties that have had repeated double-digit inflations in property tax, to a great degree, any fiscal impact associated with this bill has already been negated by the tremendous increase in property tax that they've received. In other words, if you've had a 85% increase in your residential property taxes over the last 3 years, the amount of money comes in that literally could be tens of millions of dollars. These minor cuts, now, it may be different in a county that didn't experience double-digit or almost no inflationary costs, that it could have.
Such as your home stomping grounds.
Well, and
versus
I'm
some the
thinking
other
of some of
counties.
our more least populated counties along the eastern boundary of the state. And it will be much easier if this debate moves forward, is to say, those, what I would say, that what we considered the, what's the local, the government hardship counties. And so those counties that are really just struggling even to keep one road grader going on the county road are not significantly impacted by this. So I think if that data is available when we get to the floor, if that question comes up, Mr. Chairman, we will be able to answer that question as to what is the impact to my county or my district.
Good thoughts, yeah. Senator Boner.
Yeah, along those lines, just make sure we're prepared for the floor. What effect, if any, has the recent Supreme Court decision had on this, on your property taxes? I think the distinction is that you have to be leasing it to somebody. Any effect whatsoever with that October Supreme Court decision saying the state has to pay county taxes in some circumstances?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
Senator.
Director.
Yeah, we'll have to get back to you. We haven't had it brought to our attention that it would impact, but we should look into that. So thank you, we will.
Yeah, it's a good question, Senator. I hadn't thought about that one, so. Senator Schuler, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to tag on to Senator Boner, I think because of that ruling that was recent, as long as it's used for a government purpose, I think you're going to be okay. The big issue was we had land that was supposed to be part of the state hospital that apparently they built a, huge gas station on. And, obviously it's not being used for a government function. So I think you're going to be all right with what kind of buildings you have. I don't know that you use those fuels for anything other than your needs. So I don't know.
Yeah, good thoughts all the way across. So, Director, I want to give an opportunity for your colleagues to weigh in if you so desire. I know this guy over here on the right, and Deputy, we look forward to anything you have too. So, Commissioner, what are your thoughts on this bill?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here. From where I sit as a commissioner, it's logical to treat the department the same as other state entities. That just seems appropriate to me. I think the questions asked by the other senators are dead on, and I think we can get the figures that are sought, and we'll provide those. The question about the Wyoming Supreme Court opinion is a great one. And so being someone who's supposed to be a practicing lawyer, you would think I would be more up to speed on it. So I appreciate the point. as a commissioner of the department, our budget is becoming very, very strained. And I don't say that complaining to you. I just say it as a fact. Between inflation, cost of doing business, the issues that the director pointed out, we are under strain. And so this kind of action taken by the legislature would help ease some of that, especially going forward. And I think that's the 2 points I would make, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions for, go ahead, Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to opine on the question posed by Senator Boner specific to how this, and it gets back to the purpose of those lands. And one of the ramifications to that decision is so for our school trust lands, even a grazing lease is now some interpretation considered not the purpose of those lands. And so consequently, I'm aware of a number of habitat units that the Game and Fish Department leases for grazing. And so I think one of the distinctions in my mind is if this comes up, but I think it needs to be given some discussion, because they're on the very superficial first cut, you'd say, well, it's the exact same thing. And so consequently, those lands are now going to be taxable. And I think the rationale in my mind, if this discussion comes up, would be, in my experience, is having actually worked on one of these in there, those grazing programs are to maintain the diversity and the habitat integrity of those things. And so grazing is being used as a prescriptive purpose to manage those habitat units. But I would encourage you to give that a little contemplation and some thought if it comes up. I don't anticipate it because it's not a widespread practice by the department, but it is a practice. But to give that some contemplation, and as this thing moves forward, be able to address that question. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that advice, Senator Hicks. A lot of that plays into the work that we do with the Wildlife Trust and specific projects out there that, as you mentioned, that's prescriptive sometimes, but let's have that in our back pockets, and I think that would be good. So, Deputy, any thoughts you have this morning that you'd like to share? It's good to have you here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. No, I don't think I can say anything that hasn't been said already, so look forward to see how this thing goes.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you for being here, Director and Commissioner, Deputy. We reserve the right to holler out at you a question if we get one a little bit later, okay? I want to go to further testimony on Senate File 99. I lost the number there for a moment. Senate File 99, and welcome. We know who this guy is, but please introduce yourself for the record. Look forward to your thoughts.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Bill Novotny on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. And I'll speak first to Senator Hicks's question. And Senator Hicks, we just sent you all of that data. The cost to your county is about $20,000. The hit that Teton County takes is about $143,000. The commissioners are not opposed to exempting the property that the Game and Fish has that includes their office buildings, the bear jail, other things. Our biggest concern is exempting housing. They own a lot of houses within communities. When counties provide housing to our employees, we pay taxes on that. So we'd like to see consistency within how governments are treated. So our hope is that either here this morning or on the floor, that an amendment can be offered to exempt housing from this property tax exemption. We take no issue with removing their offices from the tax rolls, but we still have to provide those essential services. And they have uses of those services when they're living in those domiciles. And so we think it's critical that we keep the consistency across the board. If counties are going to pay taxes on housing that we provide for our employees, we believe that the Game and Fish should as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions or share any of that data with you.
Mr. Novotny, thank you. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the fiscal impact of doing what you propose with the housing?
Mr. Chairman, let me just pull up Jeremiah's spreadsheet. We know that he's the guru of spreadsheets.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Hicks, go ahead.
Well, the commissioner's looking that up. My question would be, as far as amending this bill, I think it's outside the title of the bill. Because the title is game and fish property exemption, but that wouldn't preclude any number of us individuals from probably bringing that. But it's a question for our LSO staff attorneys. If we or somebody else was inclined to try to amend this bill to include county housing tax exemptions, is that outside the title and scope? I don't know. It's a question that we would, something that's posed to the attorneys.
Yeah, I think it might be worth checking it. On face value, I feel like it probably would be germane, but you know, Mike, I have a further question. Let's go ahead, Mr. Novotny, if you have been able to drill down and can answer Senator Boner's question, that would be a good start.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Senator Boner, our figures for just residential are 143,000. The commercial properties is 396,000. Agricultural is 178,000. For impact to local government finances, $719,705.
So, Senator Schuler, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Novotny, what I'm wondering about, good question. We didn't really talk about that, but I'm kind of wondering is, I know YDOT has housing throughout the state. Are those houses exempted, or do you have any idea on those in terms of, paying taxes?
Mr. Novotny, that was exactly going to be my question.
was it?
Yeah, there you
Same
go.
wavelength.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler, it is our belief that those are not on the tax rolls. And we will further confirm that. If they are being assessed, we will provide you with the figures. But our understanding is that those properties, whether it's a highway camp or other things, that those are not on the tax roll and paying property taxes.
Further questions for Mr. Novotny and our county commissioners? Bill, thanks for being here.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr.
it.
Chairman.
Yeah,
Members of the committee, good to see you this morning.
yeah, thank you. Any further testimony on Senate File 99? This is the property tax bill relating to the game and fish. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having me. My name is Anna Kaufman. I'm with the Wyoming Wildlife Federation. I'll keep it short and sweet. We just wanted to say that we support this bill.
Anna, can you get really close to the
Oh,
microphone for us,
yes, so
please?
sorry.
Thank you very much.
We just wanted to say that we really support this bill. The Game and Fish Department does really important work throughout the state, and this would enable them to reinvest those savings into the management and programs that they do throughout the state. And we think it would be a great way to kind of supplement that tightness they're starting to feel. So I'll stand for any questions.
Okay. Wyoming Wildlife Federation, any question? Anna, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it. Okay, further testimony, please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Landon, members of the committee. My name is Megan Riley. I'm with the Wyoming Outdoor Council and wanted to voice my organization's support for Senate File 99. I think, first off, we believe that it's only fair that property that's being used for governmental purposes not be taxed. It's right there in the Constitution, Article 5, Chapter 12. And to the point about housing maybe not being appropriate for an exemption, I think Game and Fish has game wardens who are on call 24/7. People show up to their houses with dead animals, and frankly, they're doing business all the time. I don't think that other agencies have staff that are using their housing as a place of business the way that our game wardens do. So I would hope that you keep that in mind as you consider amendments and exemptions. And finally, I've been going to Game and Fish Commission meetings for years and watched numerous budgets approved there. And I will tell you, all of these dollars going to be put to use for the benefit of Wyoming's wildlife and people. That is for sure. So I would strongly encourage you to vote yes on this one. And I'll answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much. Any questions for the Wyoming Outdoor Council? Well stated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Any further testimony on Senate File 99? Good morning. Mr. Garrett, we know who you are, but please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is, excuse me, Richard Garrett, and I am here this morning representing the Greater Yellowstone Coalition. I'm sure you've all had a chance to take a look at this beautiful room and how it's been made even more beautiful by the photographs that surround us. And these photographs illustrate, I think, and depict very well what the mission of the Game and Fish Department is. And that actually is the dovetails well with the mission of the Greater Yellowstone Coalition too, which is to work with everyone to protect the land, the wildlife, and the ecosystem now and for future generations. I think that this bill reflects the wise management, the frugal management of the Game and Fish Department and its commission. And I think that they are trying their best to steward the resources that are made available to them through sportsman dollars to better manage and protect for now and future generations all that we hold dear in this state. So we certainly support the bill, congratulate the committee for bringing it forward and for the Game and Fish Department's management and stewardship of our resources. So with that, glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Any questions, committee? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Garrett, appreciate it. Any further testimony? This is Senate File 99. Sue, anybody online this morning?
Mr. Chairman, there are no Zoom participants.
Okay, thank you very much. One more time, any other testimony on Senate File 99? Okay, I'm gonna close public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure on this bill?
Move the bill.
Okay, moved by Senator Hicks. Discussion. Any discussion? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think some really good points were brought up today, some things I hadn't really thought about. But I know when we discussed this, I think we did discuss the issue with YDOT having the exemptions and Game and Fish not. And so I think we felt like the equal opportunity for Game and Fish to be able to be exempted, I think was just a no-brainer. I realize that, there'll be some counties that will be affected a little bit. But I think ultimately, if you're a hunter or a fisherman or anyone that, enjoys the outdoors, we have to understand that, we've got to pay for those people to be able to manage those and to keep things, as Mr. Garrett mentioned, the Wyoming beauty that we have. And so I know things are tight with Game and Fish. We've been seeing the revenue, sources because of winter and some other things that have happened get a little tight. So I would hope that we would support this bill. Thank you.
Senator Schuler, thank you. Committee, this is one of the big five that we knew that we would be talking a lot about when we came down for this session, the whole property tax issue. From a policy standpoint, it's going to pervade. I mean, it's going to be one of the bigs that we'll talk about throughout. So it's very appropriate that I think the Travel Committee brought this forward. Very good point made, by the way, by our Outdoor Council. I appreciated that because I think some of these domiciles are a little different than the homes we live in. I've got a game warden who lives just down the street from me, and I mean, there's people parked there all the time. And a lot of times he's doing work well into the evenings. And so anyway, just some really good debate on the bill. Go ahead, Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess I would concur with most of those statements and, and to address the commissioner's concerns, I think that's a very valid concern, but I would caution the committee and actually resist any attempt to amend this. And let me explain why, Mr. Chairman. As I read through the statutes right now, and I do think it needs to be addressed, but it also exempts from property taxes, let's say, school district teacherages. And I have a number of school districts that actually own housing. That's not exempted, so the school districts are paying property tax. I guess my point being, it's a little bigger issue. I think it's a very important issue that the commissioner raised, but it's kind of outside the purview of the TRW committee to start looking at cities, towns, school districts. And so I would resist any attempts to try to amend this bill to include those and make a recommendation to maybe the revenue committee, something that we could do as we move forward to take this up as an interim. But when I look at the number of other entities that are also paying taxes for buildings, school districts being one of them for teacherages only, it's the housing issue. I think we should kind of avoid that issue with this bill, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, well stated. Okay, committee, any amendments to the bill? I won't go page by page, but any amendments? Any proposed amendment? Okay, let's take roll on Senate File 99. Sue, if you would, please.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 99. Senator Boner.
Aye.
Senator Hicks.
Aye.
Senator Jones.
Aye.
Senator Schuler.
Aye.
Chairman Landon.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, there are 5 ayes.
Thank you very much. So Senate File 99 will go to the Senate floor for consideration. Senator Schuler, would you be willing to point guard this? And that will help us get started this week. I promise you that us other committee members will step up later, right?
Yeah, we're gonna keep track.
Yeah, well, look forward to the debate going forward. We appreciate everyone being here this morning. Thank the department. Thank you to everyone who testified this morning, and look forward to working with all of you as we go forward. Appreciate it. Thank you, Director. All righty. Just as a heads up, and by the way, we're so fortunate to have Sue Mangini as our secretary of the committee. Sue, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, it's good to have you on board. And Tanner, it's good to have you alongside for, I guess, a little while, maybe not the whole session. Mr. Weekly's here. We kind of hit the lottery here, by the way. We've got the best secretary. So encourage you to work with her too as we go along. I wanted to thank our interns who have been helping us a little bit. We will see them as we keep going through. So appreciate that. Casey, thanks for being here. Okay, we'll meet next Tuesday, and we're going to take up the bonus point bill, which was worked by the TRW committee during the interim. It's got a lot of interest to it. I think we'll have a very busy day just considering that one bill. We'll be missing Senator Jones for that meeting, but we'll take it up and we'll let you know how it goes, and look forward to hearing about your travels next week.
Someplace fun.
Senator Jones is going back to Washington DC next week, so,
Awesome.
and you know probably why. So we're jealous, and that's a good thing. Thanks, everyone. We'll see everybody next Tuesday and up on the floor.